In this tutorial, I'm going to be going through the Megaplants or Procedural Vegetation Builder in Unreal Engine 5.7. So I'm going to go through how to make a massive forest of trees running at a decent frame rate inside Unreal Engine, but also how to construct those trees, how to build variations, or using the new Megaplants. So let's jump in and take a look at how to do that. So the first thing that you want to do is go to the plugins. So click on Edit, Plugins, and search for Procedural Veg and the Procedural Vegetation Editor. So check that on, make sure that's on. Don't hit restart just yet because you're also going to want to go to Edit, Project Settings, then search for Nanite, and make sure Nanite Foliage is on. So make sure those two things are on, hit restart if that comes up, and then that is going to allow you to be able to get ready for making procedural vegetation in Unreal Engine 5.7. All right, so what next? You've enabled plugins and settings in Unreal. Now let's take a look at how to leverage Megaplants. So basically thinking of them as procedural recipes for making trees. You can then make tons of variation. The two main ways to experience that quickly off the bat are the first one, which is going down here in the content browser to the engine folder. So underneath the engine folder and the plugins folder down here, you want to scroll all the way down. If you don't see this, by the way, the engine folder, click on the gear icon in the right-hand side, make sure engine content and plugin content are switched on. Then you will see this. So scroll all the way down here to your procedural vegetation plugin content, which is around about here. So procedural vegetation editor content. There we go. Let me just give myself a little bit more wiggle room there. And inside this, you will see sample assets. Inside the maps folder, you're going to see an asset zoo level is the right word. So what you want to do is make a copy of this and put it in your own content folder so that you can work on it. So that would be the first thing to do. Just right click on this, duplicate, and then you want to move that into your project area. So just go ahead and move that all the way up to a maps folder that lives inside your own content folder. Reason being, you don't want to mess with things that are in plugins or engine folders ever. So just make a copy of that first and then open it up. And the first thing that you're going to see when you do open it up is you're going to see something a little bit like this. I changed the texture on the floor, but you should see something that's a bit like this. So we've got a bunch of trees, probably see them slightly moving to start with, and then there's some more plants, and then there's some more stuff over there. So off the bat, the first thing to play with is if you grab this dynamic wind example right here. First thing to do, I've turned the wind down, so if I turn that back up a little bit, you'll see our trees there start to move. One of the really interesting things about Megaplants, I think is interesting, is the wind is so much better. The wind off the bat is using a skeleton of the tree, not the fake material vertex shader way before that we used to do it. So that's really cool because it's now more realistic. And you can see it immediately. So have a play with the wind, turn it up, see where its edges are. You can see a sort of hurricane force wind if you go up really, really fast. I don't know if that's miles per hour or it sort of looks, maybe it could be. Anyway, find its edges, find out where it starts falling apart. But you can see the trunks are bending, the leaves are playing pretty nice. So that's the first thing that you can have a bit of a play with. And then if you grab your controller, your global foliage actor, you can, if you just come back a little bit, you can grab that and rotate it, and then you can decide which direction your wind is facing in, which is very cool, very intuitive. So grab that, rotate that around, have a play with it, and you'll see this stuff working. So this particular bunch of trees here, copse or whatever you might call it. This is inside a PCG volume, this thing here. So if you click on that, you will see that as a PCG volume and some others next to it. That giant forest behind me that I made there is basically just a copy of that. So PCG volumes will bring in trees and make them instanced, and therefore the wind work. A bit later, I'm going to show you how to make your own tree variant and hook that up so that it works in the wind as an individual tree as well. But yeah, these are placed inside PCG volumes to start with. So that's the first way that you've got to explore Megaplants off the bat. The second way, which I recommend, is to go to Fab, the Fab window down here, which appears to be getting better all the time. We're going to search in Fab for Megaplants inside Fab, and there you'll see there are some variations or some species of trees in here. What I will say is that as it stands at the moment, you can do quite a bit to manipulate the trees to make them look like you want. But if anyone's used to SpeedTree, which I've used for years, it definitely doesn't have as much functionality in it as that does, just to set expectations at the beginning. The positions of branches and the shape of the tree effectively is very much baked by a data file, which I'll show you in a second. But you can still do quite a lot with them. You can still make quite a lot of variations and changes to the trees. So don't worry. Including, you could do all sorts of different colors, different leaf styles. If you just go find little bits of tree, you can put together your own trees and make a lot of different kinds of trees. But there are some limits to it. So we're going to download one of these from Fab. Let's go for the Megaplants Black Alder. And we'll do add to project, as you would expect. And then you can see that downloading in the bottom right. It's downloading that particular asset. So once that is done, you will then see that appear in content browser. And you go to the content browser, you'll then see a Megaplant library folder. You can see your tree Black Alder folder. And inside that, you will see a whole bunch of folders for materials, meshes or instances, as it says here, textures, and the sort of main construction files for each tree, and plus the recipe in the titled folder. And this is, the way this works is basically by instancing little bits of tree into an assembly. So it's very efficient. And because this second way that we've brought the tree in also brings in the recipe as well as all of the variants, the next thing I want to do is take a look at what all these things are. So a tree, in this sense, a megaplant, consists of essentially the resulting tree is a skeletal mesh or a static mesh. You can make it in two different ways. A skeletal mesh is going to have that skeleton in, so it will do this lovely wind stuff, and a static mesh will not. But you can decide which one you want to make. All these variations here have been built already for you. They come with this tree, but you can make some more given the recipe that they've given you here, which is this procedural vegetation asset here. This is the recipe to build more variants of this tree, and you can push it a long way to make it build kind of different types of tree as well in some ways. This data asset is essentially the recipe for building this tree in data form. It's a spreadsheet of sorts, and this will be the way to, if you can hack it, build even more kind of control into what you're building. But for now, the way this is currently, you're not going to be messing with this one. You are going to be messing with this procedural vegetation asset, just so you know. So if I double click on that, it will do what you would expect, which is to bring up the editor for that asset type. And when it's open, you might see it's waiting for certain meshes to build. When it's open, then you'll be able to edit it. So when that comes in, you're going to see something like this. So opened up the procedural vegetation editor with a tree that's in this form. So you will see on the left, there's our tree in our editor. If you hit Control M, you're going to get the little mannequin in there for scale reference. That's very useful because it's very hard to tell without that whether you're building a tiny plant or a giant tree. So there we have our tree in visual form, and in the right hand side we've got a graph. Should look very familiar to anyone familiar with blueprints or materials inside Unreal. From here, what we have is the preset loader. Remember I said there was that preset file right there. That's loading that preset file up. That's all it's doing, and this has total control over how many branches there are, where they're placed. So from that level, the kind of structure of the tree is pretty fixed into this preset. From that point, though, we can do all sorts of stuff to mess with it effectively and create different variations, including putting all sorts of different leaves on, cropping it, making it more sparse or dense. So there is quite a lot we can do to it. Some of the nodes here, you'll see as you right click, there's not tons of nodes in here just yet, but you've got your output and your preset loader, and those two are this one here, which loads the preset, and then at the end here you've got the output. The idea, as I said, is with this to load up the recipe, which is this procedural vegetation asset. This is the recipe for building variations, and you can see here we've got 4 variations in here. So this one is going to build each of these 4 variations. You'll see them if you click on them. There goes the progress bar again. If you click on those, you'll see each asset appear in the preview window. So each branch is basically taking a recipe, then doing things to the recipe in this graph, and then at the end we end up with this output node. And down here below it in the details panel, you should be able to see the things that we can set in the output node, which are where we're going to save this to. So if we want to make a variant, we would tell it where it's going to live, give it a name, decide whether you're going to replace existing ones or create new ones with that menu. Append, replace, ignore. So you can then do skeletal mesh or static mesh, as I said. Create nanite, I would just do that. So you create your nanite. Voxelize at distance. So to preserve shape, you can do voxelize or the other options there. The rest of it you can sort of ignore. Default tree wind settings is loaded up, just so you know. And going backwards here, so that's the output folder. The basic idea is load a preset, do a bunch of stuff to it in the middle, and then save it out at the end. And when you want to save it out, you just have to hit the export button at the top. So that will then cook out all of these 4 variations into the place where you've told it to, which in this case, as you can see, it's done in all of those skeletal meshes right there. These have already been done, so don't worry, I haven't just done that by magic in the background. These were already done, they came with it. So all those variations are already built. So what we'll do in a minute is to create a new variation just to show how that works. Okay, so we've got our preset here. We're going to make a new variation from it. And what I'm going to do is just pick the one that I want to build from. So I'm going to take this big tree and make a variation of that. So I'm going to drag off, actually, I'm going to copy all of these nodes just as a basis. So Control-C, Control-V to make a duplicate row down there. And I want to drag off the pin from the first one here, connect it to that row. And then if you click on there on the right, you'll see that I now have my own tree, a new one. So for this one, I just want to rename this to, I'm going to call it _EDT, just to give it a difference there. And I'm going to call this one _EDT as well. And so we've now got a different name. So if I was to cook that out now, it would build me a new tree. But before I do that, I want to go back through some of these nodes and just explain them and change them as well. So this mesh builder, so off the bat, this preset loader is going to load up and it's going to give you a basis for the tree that you can build. This is curves. So the basis of it is curves. It's derived from curves. You can see that if you zoom in. And if you lay down a mesh builder node straight after it, you'll see that those curves now turn into mesh. So with that mesh builder, you now have the option to do a few different things. So you can, if you're looking at your mesh, just to give you the shape, you can look at the end result if you want to do that and change it. For this step, it's probably easier to do it just by looking at the mesh. But if you hit Control L, shout out to William Faucher for sharing that tip. If you hit Control L, that will kind of fix the previewing mode on that node. So you can go back and click on other nodes quite happily. But I'm going to focus on this one right now. So if we come down here, the main things to know about are numbers of divisions, so you can change the amount of geometry in the trees, which is useful. The plant profile settings, if you click on plant profile, and let's take plant profile 0, for example. This one we can change. So there's an overall multiplier for the width of the trunk and branches. If we crank that up, you'll see it start to change, but it's obviously very biased towards that end right there. So what we want to do is even that out a little bit more, just for the example. I'm going to even that out a little bit more, so there's kind of a fat trunk tapering off as we go up. That's going to be my difference. You can exaggerate it a little bit just by clicking on the profile scale multiplier down there, and then you can apply it to the branches as well if you want. So you can make it really like, I don't know what that's like now, a baobab or not quite. Anyway, there's some significant change that I've done to the tree already in the mesh. You can also add displacement to it and a few other things, but that's the mesh. So as we go to the next one, the bone reduction, it's all bones and joint driven. So think of this as like it's like a character for a tree essentially, and this is going to bend and wave with wind using physics from the skeleton, as opposed to the old kind of decent-ish but fake looking at some point method for doing wind. So this one, bone reduction, you can just essentially remove more or less bones if you crank it up. So that's bone reduction. You can then go to the foliage palette, where this node is going to show you the foliage options that you have, and this is driven again by the preset, so not something you can change, but you can change the assets. If you get new static meshes, you can push them in at this point, create different leaves, different twigs. So for that, from that purpose, you could put different leaves on this tree, make them look different colors, or make them just twigs, whatever you want to do, you can slot those in there. From the foliage palette, which is the sort of list of available ends for your tree, the distributor is what then sticks them on the tree. So from this recipe, that's what is sticking these to the tree. There is a preset for that as well in the preset, but if you want to do your own settings, if you click on override distribution, then what you can do is tweak these values. If I crank up the instance spacing, that's kind of making a slightly more sparse tree. And then you can mess with the scale and the spacing and just have a play with these settings and see what they do. That's my recommendation. But I'm going to kind of stop at that point. I've made that, which is slightly sparser, bigger, thicker trunk. All right, so there's a few things that we can do to it. A couple others that aren't in this example are, if you look at the spatial nodes here, you've got some that you'll recognize. So bone reduction, foliage distributor, etc. There's a few in here that aren't in this graph. So if I go to add some of those in, we'll go to gravity, remove branches. What else have we got? Carve. Put those in that. So these nodes I'm going to connect up right now. Let's just connect those together. And I'm going to be connecting them before the rest of those nodes. So disconnect that one and connect up this one. So now we should see our tree there. So from this one, you've got the ability to, as you carve, kind of remove the bottom of the tree. So you can make it smaller. So that's one thing you can do with the carve node. The gravity node is an interesting one. So gravity, you can add, obviously that's in a construction sense. So gravity there makes the branches bend down, as you can see. So you can make a sort of weird wilty alien looking tree, or, weeping willow, various different things that you could do with that. And then remove branches. If you do that, it will remove branches. So going from the kind of base recipe there, if you like, you can do things to that recipe. And next we'll export the tree. Before I do that, I will actually just reconnect this original first tree instead of the fourth one there, because I realized I had a different one attached there. I was just thinking, tree looks a bit different. Okay, here we go, back with that kind of three-pronged tree. And now I might actually add a little bit more gravity back in. Maybe not that much, just to make it look really obviously very different and strange. So adding a little bit more of that gravity. Let's do that. All right. So now I'm going to export the tree. So remember, that was the end node here. And from this end node, what I want to do is go to the export button up here. Click on export, and by default, this will just export the one you've got selected, as it says there. But you can also batch export, which if you've got all these output nodes selected, say you've got hundreds of variants already set up here, you can set it so it will export all of them in one go. But I just want to do this one. So I'm going to hit export, leave that as it is, and hit export. Now, because I set my paths already in the end node there, the export node, this is going to go off and build my skeletal meshes. So that will take a second and be back when it's done. All right, now that's done, we should see, if I just move this out of the way, we should see a new tree in here. There it is. So not in the same folder as the first variant, because we've got a folder per variant, but there's our new variant. And there you go. There's the skeletal mesh and the skeleton. So as you can see here, we've got our crazy looking tree, and we've got all the bones over there. So like any other skeletal mesh, you can move them around and test it if you want to. But there we have our skeletal mesh. So what we want to do to be able to use that next with wind is a bit strange, but let's take a look. So to use this tree in the world, you can go ahead and drag the tree into the world like that, and you'll see it, but you'll see it's not moving. And the way to make it move, remember I said that PCG kind of instances by default. This is not an instance, this is just placed in the world. So we need to actually use an instance. And to be able to do that, what we want to do is create a blueprint to wrap it. So this is done with a blueprint class of type actor. And I'm going to call this BP folder EDT. I can open that blueprint editor up. And in here, what I want to do in the top left is click Add and type Instance. And we're looking for Instance Skinned Meshes. So this is going to create a container for our mesh, which we just made. So if I scrunch this up a little bit so we can see a bit better. What I basically want to do here is grab my tree skeletal mesh and drag it into this one right here under skeletal asset. So I drag that in there, you'll see that jump in there. Now what we want to do is drag in our wind into this setting in the animation slot here, and as I'm not personally seeing it there, what I can do is come down all the way down here, back to our procedural folder here, click on that, and just do a quick search inside here for wind, and we'll see this wind transform provider. So the wind provider is what plugs in to that, and then the last thing that we want to do, which is interesting, is to go down to the instances tab right here, there we go, and just click on the plus, and then that will pop our tree in there. So it needs one of those for the tree to actually appear for some reason, and you hit compile and save and all of that good stuff, and then you've got your tree in your blueprint. And now if we go back to our folder with our tree in, clear the search, if we drop the blueprint in there, you'll see that now is reacting to the wind. So that's how you can put one in there. If you have a PCG volume with lots of trees in it, this you can just drop in skeletal meshes, but if you want to put single trees in there, say you want to take one of these, then just wrap it in a blueprint, do those things, and that will work. So that's how you create a new variation of an existing recipe. And as I said, there are a lot of things you can do there. At some point, if you want to be able to be really specific, as specific as you are in SpeedTree, this is going to mean that we're waiting for updates or going to try and hack that data asset, which might be a little tricky. But there you go. That's how you can create a new variation of an existing Megaplant. And if you go here to Fab, as I said, you've got the ability to search for all the existing ones. There's 5 in there. Somebody has gone and made already for $30 currently a whole bunch more. So maybe you could go and explore that. But there's 3 or 5, sorry, free ones from Quixel. If I zoom back over to my forest over here, you can see this whole forest moving and animating in the wind. The wind actually seems to die off at some point. If you come up here, you'll see that there's no wind in the background there. So maybe a setting that you can adjust with that. But right here, you can see you've got your forest of trees from the PCG example. I just cranked up the density effectively for this, decreased the pruning, put a little bit of texture on the floor. And then if you want to see the nanite behavior, go to the shader mode, go to nanite visualization, and then you can switch on triangles to see all the crazy triangles in there. You can zoom back to see it kind of getting more efficient in the background, and fading off to the voxel in the background, or like less polys and then voxels eventually. So it's super efficient. And if you want to kind of crank up that the voxel visualization just for fun, to check it out, there is a CVAR that you can use here, which is, if I just go back here, type that in, it's r.nanite.viewMeshLODBias.offset. And if you put 0 in, it means it will do nothing. If you put 5 in, then it's going to get pretty intense. And that's just to be able to see voxels showing up. So you can kind of see them fade out as you get closer, but it just exaggerates that effect so that you can see that's what voxels means. It's just usually that's happening way in the distance. This is just crunching that up into the foreground so you can kind of see what voxels means. Basically little tiny cubes in this sense, but preserving the volume, and they still light and behave the same way that you would expect. So yeah, this is again just to exaggerate. If you want to turn that off, go back and set the same CVAR to 0, and then you'll get back to this kind of state here. But yeah, so that is procedural foliage generation using Megaplants, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope this has been helpful, and go have a play. As I said, the two main places that you're going to find to play are enabling the plugin and going and checking out that folder all the way down there, or go to Fab and bring one of these in. I suggest do both. Have a play, make some weird trees, and I'd love to hear in the comments how you did. Hit the like and subscribe button. That helps out my channel, and I'm doing my best to grow that again this year. So appreciate that. Hope you've enjoyed it. Reach out, let me know what you thought in the comments, if I got anything wrong, or if you have any thoughts, or if you want to post pictures of trees. I'd love to see them. All right, take care everybody. Go make some cool trees. See you soon. Bye-bye.